I wanted to point out we're coming up on 6 minutes after 9 o'clock. It's 17, and we're going to share with you during the course of this hour some lengthy clips from an interview I did yesterday morning with Ted Nugent. He's going to be in Twin Falls a week from tomorrow, and he is the headliner at the Idaho Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife Banquet taking place at the old Sears store at the Magic Valley Mall on February 16th. And when Ted finishes up, our studio analysts, Todd Eccles and Forrest Anderson, are going to chime in too as well. 6 minutes after 9 o'clock, we're at 18. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on KLIX. And let's get right down to business with Ted Nugent. There's a great deal of issues that you all face. I read these things online where people, they're not only critical of gun ownership, but people more increasingly seem to be critical of hunting. There's a guy in Wyoming who seems to be leading a charge about, he calls it animal cruelty, and he thinks that we could just go get all of our hamburger at the grocery store. This doesn't go away, does it?
Well, I got to tell you, happy 2019, where truth, logic, and common sense, science, and biology still exist alive and well, and we celebrate that. You know, I'm 70 years old, and I'm having the greatest hunting season of my life, and that's really, really saying something, Bill, because I've hunted every year. I was on my dad's back on October 1st, 1949, at the tender age of 10 months, and I've never missed a hunting season since. It really is a lifestyle for dedicated sportsmen and conservationists. Those of us that know there's an intellectual, a physical, a biological, and ultimately a spiritual obligation to remain in touch with the source of our life, which is nature, which is the good Mother Earth, which is critters, which is food and shelter and clothing and tools and weapons. And quality of life comes from quality air, soil, and water, which can only come from quality wildlife habitat. Now, the real astonishing thing here, Bill, is that I'm just a guitar player, and I figured that out all by myself. So that truth, logic, and common sense, real hands-on, wise, responsible, even reverential use of these precious renewable resources. I mean, venison, it's literally one of the last perfect things left. And you mentioned that I come to Idaho for business. Well, you know, I have a song called Working Hard, Playing Hard that says, now it's my turn to show my stuff, sometimes fun, sometimes rough. I'm working hard to earn my way, but lucky me, my work is play. So when I come to Idaho, in fact, when I tour all across this country for 60 damn years, are you kidding me? It really is a celebration of my American dream. And Bill, I've had this unbelievable privilege and blessing to hang out with hunters and fishermen and trappers, heroes of the military and law enforcement, just great working hard, playing hard families that know that the outdoors is not just sport and recreation. It really is life itself. I mean, we have more deer, more turkey, more geese, more cougars, more bears in North America than ever in recorded history, thanks to hunters, fishermen, and trappers who pay the scientific monitoring bills and safeguard the habitat that gives every living thing quality of life, quality air, soil, and water. So this is what we celebrate, and I know that there's idiots out there. There are Americans that don't believe we need secure borders. I mean, that's not an opinion. That's just insanity. We have Americans. We have human beings, I guess, that actually believe you can go ahead and murder a child upon birth. So, yes, there's a real ugly anti-hunting, anti-freedom, anti-gun insanity out there, but there's things that are much, much worse. But it's a manifestation of a cultural abandonment and deprivation that anybody could believe that wildlife will thrive if we abandon them. We have to. We are morally obligated to responsibly harvest the surplus every hunting season. I mean, I got to laugh when I say this because it's like, duh, if you don't harvest the surplus, there's no room in the habitat for next year's fawns or calves or cubs. I mean, Bill, who the hell doesn't know this? And I guess the numbnut in Wyoming who thinks we could just stop hunting when it's been proven irrefutably forever that when you mess with the sustained yield annual harvest, that the government bureaucrats will come in and torch gobs of tax dollars for damage control instead of just letting the natural science of we the people harvesting the surplus for food, clothing, shelter, tools, weapons, fun, sport, meat, and trophy, perfection every time. So, I call them blood brothers. The Idaho Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, our organization, Hunter Nation, all these great organizations, we're fighting the abandonment of nature that is manifested in an anti-hunting, that we stand up and fight for it, and we have to confront the idiots, the liars, the those who abandon wildlife. If you don't have a hunting, fishing, or trapping license in your pocket, you are no friend of wildlife. Case closed.
I was thinking a couple of hours ago, I just wrapped up an interview with a conservation officer from Idaho Fish and Game, and we were talking about, number one, we've got serious depredation issues. We're being overrun by elk. Just south of the city of Twin Falls, we are having a population boom with moose. We've got more and more interactions with mountain lions, people and mountain lions.
Well, Bill, I don't mean to interrupt, but you know why you have all those overpopulations of wildlife out there, don't you? Because I haven't been out there lately. I mean, if I brought my trusty bow and arrow, we would eliminate the surplus. Bill, Idaho, the great rugged individual, defiant, stand up for what you believe in, independent Idahoans allow this to happen. That is another example of why I am such a radical and extremist, because I know that God gave us this experiment in self-government so that we, the people, could demand constitutional and scientific, when it comes to wildlife, scientific accountability by our elected employees. And if you have an overpopulation of wildlife, kill more animals. Write that down. The guy who wrote Wango Tango actually knows how to fix this stuff, and wherever we implement that simple scientific truism, wildlife remains in the asset column instead of the liability column. Doesn't everything I say just make ridiculous amounts of perfect sense and logic to you?
Spot on.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm a radical. That's why people go, Nugent's an extremist. You're damn right I am. An experiment in self-government is the most radical thing in the history of the world, because we will not bow down and genuflect to tyrants and despots and punks that think they can control our life. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, Charlie Schumer. We're draining the swamp, and we're going to build the damn wall. Any questions, call 1-800-NUMBNUT, and Maxine Waters will try to find a syllable for you.
Yeah, you referenced hunting when you were a child. And the other challenge, I guess, is to find that next generation of hunters, because a lot of young people today, no one's teaching them any longer.
Well, here's another phenomenal thing. Again, I'm just a guitar player. My name is Ted Nugent, and I am a rock and roll backstrapper. I might be the only one. What I have witnessed is that the worst enemy for hunting, conservation, gun rights, and freedom, the worst enemy for those self-evident truths is our own people. Hunters that will, squawk and condemn others' chosen legal methodology. Well, I don't use a scope on my muzzleloader. I'm Davy Crockett. Shut up. If you'd like to use a crossbow or a compound or a longbow or a recurve or a 300 Weatherby Magnum, I don't care. Do you have an elk tag? Shoot an elk and do it how you choose to do it. So the biggest obstacle to the critical recruitment for new and young hunters, and again, well, I think, if I may, I think I might be the perfect example of what true North Compass setting is available to young people. Because I was growing up, World War II aftermath, and America was just celebrating freedom and the Constitution, and how warriors driven by freedom were able to crush the Japanese and the Nazi monsters. So I was raised in a hunting family where it was still celebrated, and it was positive win-win-win: hunting, fishing, trapping, outdoor, marksmanship, safe, aim small, miss small, firearms, excitement was a big part of our life. But now, Bill, you've got these leaders of the conservation community who talk all about ethics and ethics and ethics. Well, we have ethics. We conduct ourselves morally and responsibly and legally, but you're not going to attract a young person to go hunting because it's ethical. Nobody watches NASCAR because the drivers are ethical. They are ethical, but they don't bother mentioning it. They watch NASCAR because of speed and maneuverability and the occasional crash.
Now, we're going to pick this back up after the break in a couple of minutes, but I do want to point out you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Forrest Anderson and Todd Eccles in studio with us. Bill Colley with you, too. We've got a lot more of the interview with Ted Nugent on the way, but, your take on what he's talking about.
I agree with it. We need to bring, toward the end there, he's talking about, drawing the youth to hunting, drawing in more troops and people, attracting it to hunting. We need to do that. We need to do it for the right reasons. We need to teach them how to do it, legally, but we need to get back to hunting. We need to get back to making the memories with the kids and the families. I mean, he talked about how he started hunting way back on his daddy's back when he was 4 years old or whatever it was. That's what we need to start doing. He remembers that as a memory, and he's got that coming all the way through. We need to get back to take the screens away from our kids and get them out on the field, get them out hunting and fishing and making those memories so they can do that for their kids.
Some of the best experiences, hunting trips I have, sometimes we didn't even harvest. It was just being out there with family and having that experience. And I think that's what we need to do. I mean, we need to do that in general. We need to do more things as a family rather than putting our kids in karate and soccer and baseball and football and basketball and have them committed to something all the time. Why don't we just spend some time with our kids? Yeah. Rather than having somebody else spend time with them, they're coaches of all these 50 million different things that we put them in. Why don't we just spend some time with them? Why don't we say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're not going to pay somebody to hang out with you this season. We're going to take you out and spend time with you. We're going to do something every weekend and do that.
I see kids buried in commitments right now, and they're in junior high and they're high school. They're going to be adults soon enough, and they're going to be buried in plenty of commitments then. Then. So, like I said, take them out, spend some time with them, teach them stuff that they're not going to learn on YouTube and that video game. Hands-on stuff. Spend some time with them.
We got more coming up. Todd and Forrest are going to stick around, and we're going to hear more from Ted Nugent after the break. It's coming up on 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you, too, on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 20, and just a reminder, there are still tickets, I believe, available, not many, for the Idaho Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife Banquet coming up in Twin Falls a week from tomorrow on the 16th. Just check out the website for Idaho. Well, I'll read it out for you. IdahoSFW.org. IdahoSFW.org. More with Ted Nugent on the way. Wanted to mention, joining me in the studio, we've got Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense and Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We'll get directly back to Ted Nugent as well. Conversation taped with Nugent yesterday because he was unable to be with us live this morning. We're at 17. And again, he is going to be in Twin Falls 1 week from tomorrow.
Our so-called hunting leadership has scared away an entire generation by talking like Mr. Rogers meets Mitt Romney with all the passion of a sun-baked turd. You've got to celebrate the joys and the challenge and the archery discipline. And I've had a Ted Nugent Camp for Kids nonprofit charity for 30 years, Bill, but you've never heard of it. Because Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, Sports Afield, and all these other organizations haven't mentioned the Ted Nugent Camp for Kids, where for 30 years We've trained over 18,000 boys and girls between 7 and 17 about the joys of archery, the joys of marksmanship, the importance of safe gun handling, resource stewardship, being clean and sober so you can be the best that you can be. And a bullseye with a bow and arrow or a slingshot or a Daisy Red Ryder or a handgun or a shotgun or a rifle, that is how you get high. That's how you challenge yourself and feel a sense of accomplishment when that 22 bullet knocks down that can. And I've had this camp teaching these kids for 30 years, and our industry hasn't even mentioned it yet. And I'm not looking for an attaboy. I could care less about that. But what a perfect system by which to recruit and entice young people into the sport. Meanwhile, the industry sits around with their thumb up their ass, trying to sell everybody a new faster bow or a new 30 caliber bullet when they're missing the whole point of having fun outdoors. And even at the tender age of 70, I'm 70. I shouldn't be this energized. But because I've been clean and sober for 70 years and celebrated the mystical flight of the arrow and aim small, miss small outdoor excitement, I'm alive as alive can be, and I think that's why the Idaho Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife and Hunter Nation, and that's why I've got some of the most votes in the history of the NRA for over, 27 years I've been on the board of directors, because I am a radical. I am radically alive, and I attribute that, Bill, to my diet of venison for my entire life, and the shopping spree that is the hunting, fishing, trapping season. In between rock and roll tours, that's how I cleanse my soul, charge my batteries, and pursue life, liberty, and happiness. It's so simple, it's stupid.
Ted Nugent explaining how this is really his way. Of course, he was telling me about his touring schedule, 70 years old, and the fact that he's in good health. And that he finds that this is his way to unwind. You talked earlier about family memories, but it's also that ability when you're just out there and, you really, let's say you're sitting in a stand somewhere, you can sit there for hours. It's almost like Zen.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, all year long, you work. Life is hectic. And then it comes to hunting season. I look forward to hunting season every year, whether or not I draw that perfect tag, whether or not I actually harvest an animal. It doesn't matter to me. It's the time out there. It's the time sitting in that tree. It's the time sitting in that blind. It's that time sitting in that duck blind, waiting for those ducks. I just enjoy it. You can, kind of become one with nature. You kind of get, be one with your thoughts. Become, if you're into it, you can be one with God. You can have your family there. Your kids. You're teaching them to do the same thing.
My two uncles were the first two guys to commercially float the Middle Fork of the Salmon on a regular basis in the late 40s after World War II. And they said they'd get these businessmen come in, and he'd say, look, don't worry about your phone because it's not going to ring. You don't have any way to call anybody for a week. You're going to be on the Middle Fork. There's no phones. There's no nothing. So he says you'd see these frantic people come in, and by day 3, they were relaxed, they were happy, because they had gotten into the experience. And it's the same way when I go hunting, I like to watch my dog work. I like to just be out there, and for a while, I'm just separated from the nonsense of life. There's a lot of great things in life and the challenges that come with it, but it's kind of nice to just take some time. And then I love to be with my boys and see the excitement that they have and to see them learn and do those things. And I don't know, I agree 100%. It's a great opportunity to be out there and be part of nature. And I'll tell you what, the people that care about the environment the most are the people who are out there in it,
partaking of it.
Yep.
I was going to say, that's what we're looking at possibly losing, because with all the other, there was a day that we didn't have video games, we didn't have 500 channels, and we didn't have the internet, and this is how people spent their time, and it's become even more urbanized in southern Idaho. We're going to lose a lot of that.
If you want to do something great for your family, cancel your cable, cancel your direct TV.
Yeah.
We got a few air channels you can keep up on the news, and if you want to get Netflix or Amazon to watch some movies, you can do that. But take away that I haven't had cable television or any form of that in 20 years, and it's been such a great. And the why I originally got away from it is because I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just another bill every month. So give yourself a little financial freedom and give yourself your mind a rest.
And
Do something else.
I'll tell you real quick, I'm looking forward, I get caught up in life and work and everything else, and I'm looking forward to this summer. I went out and bought a rooftop tent for my vehicle, and I'm looking forward to getting out with my two boys. Friday nights, Saturday nights, whatever. And whether it's a quick overnight or a 2-day jaunt, I'm getting out camping, teaching them how to start a fire, how to cook outside, the joys of the outdoors. I'm looking forward to that.
We've got to take a short break. Todd Starnes is coming up, and then more of Ted Nugent, our conversation with Ted Nugent, joining me in the studio. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, and Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. We've got more with Ted Nugent this hour. Spoke to us yesterday because he had a plane flight this morning and he was worried about connecting with us live on the radio. Also joining me in studio, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond, Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 22 at 9:32, and again, we pick up the conversation with Ted Nugent.
Well, again, Bill, those G-forces on Nancy Pelosi's face? She always looks uncomfortable and confused, and just weird. That's because I'm alive. I promote the perfection of being armed and capable of one's individual self-defense. The National Rifle Association celebrates the most obvious God-given individual right as guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. And if you are not a member of the National Rifle Association of America, Nancy Pelosi would like to thank you. And horror of horrors, the Democrats have now admitted they don't want gun control. They use the term gun safety. They're not interested in gun safety. They have now come out and admitted they want to confiscate the guns they don't like, which are the guns that we like, the guns that we use for every imaginable legal purpose under the sun. The Democrats have now admitted they want to confiscate our right to keep and bear arms. And if you are forced into unarmed helplessness, you are a slave. And if you're not a member of the NRA, you are pro-slavery, period.
We actually are seeing, I think, an effort to not only, it started with AR-15, and now they're trying to demonize just about every firearm that's available, and they don't mind obscuring the details in order to try to get what they want. You mentioned the NRA. We need that education. We need to be able to explain to people, maybe in a way that's not too terribly complex, but to allow people to know that that people are playing some, I call them word games with us.
Well, look at California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts. There is no Second Amendment in those states. Bill, the Constitution is an American document giving Americans the authority of our God-given rights. When the hell did the Second Amendment become a states' rights issue? Do you have to have a permit in some state for your First Amendment rights? Do you need government paperwork for any of our rights other than the right to keep and bear arms? Here's an alert for everybody. With or without the Constitution, I have the right to defend myself. With or without anyone else's authority, I have the right to keep and bear arms. And for those out there that are still seeking education, let the guitar player help you out. Keep means it's mine, you can't have it. Bear can only mean one thing. I've got a couple on me right now, and they're loaded. That's what keep and bear means, Nancy Pelosi. That's what keep and bear means, Eric Holder. That's what keep and bear means, Chuck Schumer. If you are forced into unarmed helplessness, you have something in common with everyone who gets murdered, carjacked, raped, or kidnapped. Who could possibly live with themselves if they accept forced unarmed helplessness? I'm sorry, Bill. The Nugent family doesn't even know what to do with this information. We will not be forced into unarmed helplessness. Period.
So he brought up something when he talked about you don't have to have a permit for your other rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, and I thought about what Forrest said earlier, where that's what they'd come for next anyway.
Yeah, that's the way it works. And I think about the do-gooders in 1930s Germany who said, you know what? It's probably a good idea that we disarm this segment of the population because it'll make it safer. You know, they thought they had been brainwashed into thinking they were doing a good thing. And how they must have felt in 1945 when it was exposed that the German government had killed 6 million members of of the Jewish population, and it was because they had capitulated and supported that idea that that was a good idea. Even though their intention wasn't to kill 6 million people, their decision to support that ultimately caused the death of those 6 million people. So they were as much a part of it as anyone. If the German people had stood up and said, no, we're not going to allow you to do this, it never would have got done. But everybody's feeling bad. How about the people in Venezuela who have recently said, you know, a few years ago said, yeah, this is a good idea. We need to disarm ourselves. It'll be safer. And now they're all dying of starvation. Mm-hmm. Their decision to support that is what caused that. So Ted's exactly right. They have responsibility for that, one way or the other.
Todd?
I agree 100%. I mean, attack the family, attack everything. You know, they're going to take away your gun rights. You're going to take away your hunting. You're going to take away the memories that you can spend with your family. You can't defend yourself, so they're going to come and take away all your other rights, and they're going to end up like Cuba or you know, places like that. And you know, you can't provide for yourself if you can't hunt. I mean, it's just an ongoing thing. If they can get your firearms, if they can get our firearms, we're done. I mean,
slavery was the word he used.
Yeah, slavery. They'll take away everything else. We can't defend ourselves. We can't provide for ourselves. We can't even have a decent family at that point.
Talking to the people in Cuba, people would say, well, why don't they just stand up and revolt? Well, their gun rights have been gone for 60 years. So there aren't any guns in private hands.
Right.
So when they decide to rise up and the government just says, you know what, we're going to cut off your food supply because that's where they get their food. Ultimately, that's how the Democrats and socialists would like it. So you come to the government to get your food, to get your fuel for your car, everything. So the minute you rise up, they say, you know what, no food this month.
You're cattle in a pen.
Yeah.
That's all you are.
Yep.
We've got more coming up with Ted Nugent. Little tidbit here. I asked him 2 questions at the very end. It's 8.5 minutes long with his response. So he was a little fired up as we wrapped up yesterday. We've got more on the way. Also, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense joining me, Bill Colley, in the studio on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. We're at 21. I wanted to mention, of course, you can hear more from Ted Nugent if you decide to attend the Idaho Sportman for Fish and Wildlife Banquet next week. It's going to be Saturday, February 16th here in Twin Falls. That's going to be at the Old Sears department store at the Magic Valley Mall. And you can get tickets. I believe there still might be a few left if you go to the website idahosfw.org. That SFW stands for Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife, but idahosfw.org. And in fact, you'll see Ted's picture at the website. We'll get back to Ted, and then we'll have a wrap-up with both Todd Eccles and Forrest Anderson in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Last point I want maybe you to address, and I was chatting with the guys who host our gun show last week, and they explained that a lot of people who are anti-gun, as well as anti-Second Amendment, that once you actually, they get an opportunity to actually do some shooting, it's an eye opener for them, and maybe we need to encourage more of that, more
Well,
involvement.
certainly that's the battle cry of all of us out here. Certainly the National Rifle Association's on the front lines of that, and along with other great gun organizations, all the different state gun organizations here in Texas, the Texas Rifle and Pistol Association, Owners of America, and the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, the Second Amendment Foundation. There's some great organizations, but really the cry for the right to keep and bear arms is the NRA, and we've been pushing take a new shooter to the range. I don't know if you ever saw me on Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations ultra-liberal TV show.
I did.
But I put a belt-fed M60 in old Anthony's hands and changed his life forever. And it was literally that encounter with the old Motor City Second Amendment madman where I shared with him the joys of brass rainbows from full automatic weaponry and just some .22 single-shot plinking, and the joys of trigger control, sight acquisition, the ballet of aim small, miss small, that breathing, that out-of-body subconscious oneness with the beautiful technology and engineering of modern firearms. I literally turned a New York City gun-hating liberal into a machine gun nut in about 25 minutes. And you're absolutely correct. When you take a person to the range, and boy, do I have examples of this. Our Ted Nugent Camp for Kids has been doing this for 30 years now. And we start with Daisy Red Ryder BB guns and some various pellet rifles and whatnot, including slingshots and bows and arrows. I mean, the kids just get giddy when they grab that bow or that little single-shot rifle. And they can't wait to get the trigger finger, to work with the hand-eye coordination of sight acquisition and learn that breathing control. These kids fall in love with firearms discipline. That's the key. Firearms discipline. You know, I mentioned a minute ago, Bill, that I've been clean and sober for 70 years. People ask me all the time how I avoided the temptation to get drunk and stoned, and I said, I avoided the temptation. There was no temptation to get drunk and stoned. I avoided that like I avoided the temptation to stab myself in the eyeball with an ice pick. It looked like a really stupid idea. I mean, all these goofball rock and roll numbnuts were running around drooling and puking and stumbling and trying to form sentences and dying. What could possibly be tempting about that? Conversely, the temptation to be one with the weapon, the firearm, the bow and arrow, even a slingshot. These kids love the slingshots, whipping marbles down there, floating balloons. The shooting sports discipline will attract all humanity when supervised in a safe, experienced mentor condition. They literally 100% of the time. I've taken some hardcore lefty hippie goofball musician friends of mine to the range that hated guns, hated the NRA, were scared to death of guns, and within about 10 minutes, they not only fell in love with the joys of aim small, miss small discipline, but they all became gun owners, all of them, because it is contagious. Because God created us to value His gift of life. And the ultimate way to value the gift of life is to protect it. And the only way to stop evil is to be armed and to keep and bear arms. And we have been so brainwashed by the propaganda ministry, from right after World War II with our failed anti-education system. For the most part, there's some great teachers out there, and only the guilty need to feel guilty when I condemn the propaganda ministry that runs amok in academia, media, Hollywood, and all across the Democrat landscape. But those of us that are introduced to the shooting sports by someone experienced and conscientious with safety as the primary overview, Bill, it's 100% recruitment if done properly. So that's what the NRA does. And that's what my friends in Idaho and all across America, the Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife, this is one of our main goals, to teach people that you have to harvest the surplus wildlife every year to keep wildlife healthy and to keep habitat healthy. And the shooting sports is the ultimate instant joy of aim small, miss small gratification. And again, you're on the phone with a 70-year-old lifetime mystical flight of the arrow backstrapper. I live for October, November, and December. I also live for the summer tour because I got the best band in the world, Greg Smith on bass guitar and Jason Hartless on drums. Not only am I having the greatest hunting season of my life right now because we're still hunting here in Texas, but I had the greatest tour of my life in 2018 all summer across America. I'm a lucky, lucky guy, but I really attribute to my vitality, my energy, my happiness, my quality of life to God, family, country, my incredible wife, Shemaine, my wonderful children. Everybody on my team is so positive, so driven to excellence to be the best that they can be. But primarily, I am able to apply all this positive energy because I've been clean and sober my entire life. I fueled my sacred temple with the perfection of nutritious venison, and I get great joy bringing anguish, pain, and suffering into the lives of liberals. So I have a real good, balanced life, and that's why I'm coming to Idaho, because I know I'm not alone. I got blood brothers out there. It's going to be a great, great day.
I know you've got a run, you've got a busy schedule, but quickly, you've referenced the camp for children. If somebody hears this and their kids would like to get involved, how would they do that?
Boy, I got great volunteers, Bill. My goodness. The Ted Nugent Camp for Kids is a 501c3 nonprofit, strictly volunteer charity where we train children from 7 to 17, boys and girls from all across the country. We have camps in Nebraska, Colorado, Iowa, and South Dakota. And we put probably 200-plus kids per year, some years more than twice that. And you can go to my website, tednugent.com, but I would really welcome everybody to come to my Facebook or somehow track down my Ted Nugent Facebook. My God, the positive energy and spirit, and it's always focused on the recruitment. We need to recruit children to conservatism, to conservation, to the Golden Rule, the Ten Commandments, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We do this every day on my Facebook, but if people have kids that want to learn and really share that enthusiasm with boys and girls of their age groups, we put on 4 camps a year, and you can find out all the wonderful information at my website, and we're so proud of it. And again, it's just my greasy little rock and roll name that's on it that gets the attention of people, but it really is the volunteers that bring quality to these kids at these camps.
And so that's where we wrap things up, talking about the camps. And if you think about it, 3 of those states are relatively close to us in the state of Idaho. And so if people have kids who'd like to go, people send their kids to camps 1,000 miles away all the time anyway for a week at a stretch. Nebraska and Colorado, South Dakota would be relatively close. But that's his goal, is to make sure that next generation continues this, because, public support is really what's going to be important in the long run in maintaining your Second Amendment rights, because at some point, if the public says, we'll just let it go, that may well happen. We're at 21, it's 9:51, and joining me in the studio, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond, and Bill Colley handling the telephones on News Radio 1310 KLIX. So what did you think overall?
I agree with what he said. I mean, it is about recruitment of youth, of kids, of the youth to the shooting sports, and not only the youth. Don't forget about your neighbor or your buddy or that person that may have an opinion. Maybe they're a bit of an anti, but they've never been shooting before. Invite them, take them, teach them, let them shoot. It may cost you a few bucks, a little bit of time, and a few bucks in ammo, but let them shoot. Let them. There's lots of people who are anti-gun out there, and they're anti-gun because that's what the media tells them to be. That's the only thing they know. But they've never picked up a firearm. They've never actually shot a firearm before. Take them out, shoot them, let them see how much fun it is, how much enjoyment they can get out of it. I remember there's a gal that I know. And I'd known her for years, and she's from Maryland, very anti-gun, had never shot one before in her entire life. She married an Idaho boy and was here for a few years. And she decided, well, I'm going to take this class. I'm going to take this class with my husband. He really wants to take it. So they showed up to my class. She'd never fired so much as I don't even think a BB gun. Okay. And she showed up to class. We gave her a 22 to shoot. She started shooting 22 and then a 9mm. And that's the first time she'd shot. And she's like, man, I understand why you guys enjoy this so much. I mean, it changed her life. She's like, it's an eye-opening experience for her. And she left the class being the best shot in the class. So she never shot anything, best shot in the class. But the more important thing is the fact that she actually tried it and she made that decision on her own. It wasn't just one that was handed down to her from her family, from the people that she was around, from the state that she lived in. She made that decision on her own, and that's what we need to do, is help people make a decision on their own.
It's transcendent, though, because it also bleeds into the fact that let people feel the freedom that they will feel when they know they can defend themselves. It's the same way when someone who hasn't had a job or hasn't been around working people bring home their first paycheck. They realize what it is to be able to feed themselves, to be able to pay for their own means. When people taste freedom and really become a part of it, they hunger for it. When people really taste the ability to defend themselves, they're not helpless. It's an amazing thing to see. I have a gentleman who comes to my shop and buys from me, and he's from Iran. And he's a Christian from Iran and was subjected to all kinds of things that regime put those people through. And he's come here now, and he is the biggest proponent of our Constitution. He's the biggest proponent of Second Amendment rights because he truly understands, because he's lived in an environment where he never had those, where he was completely at the hands of the government. And how he appreciates that. And we need to share that with people so they can feel that, to know what it is to be free. It's one thing to have the idea, I guess I live in a free country. It's another thing to actually use those freedoms, learn how to defend yourself, learn how to feed yourself, and not feel helpless, and have some hope, and know that, you know what, I'm not dependent on those knuckleheads up in Washington. I can take care of myself. And that's what Ted's talking about there. That's what being American, that's what being free is all about. That's what separates us from so many other countries, is they might think they have freedom, but they truly don't. They have freedom as long as the government decides they can have freedom. Right? Here we have it. It's built in our Constitution. Don't let them take the rights. Train yourself, enable yourself, learn how to use those weapons, learn how to feed yourself, learn how to hunt, learn how to trap, and be a good person, be a good neighbor. And share that opportunity with other people who maybe haven't had it, and that will change their minds. You can talk to people till you're blue in the face, but you won't change their mind until they actually experience it for themselves.
We got a little under 2 minutes to go, so I do want to ask the two of you, since you've been kind enough to stick around for another hour, where people would find you, because everything he's talking about is related to what you do.
Right, yeah. Patriot Defense, you can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. If you've got any questions about any upcoming classes, you want to schedule something, or we had a caller in the first hour that called up and said, hey, look, I shoot rifles, I've got a handgun, I don't know how to shoot it, that type of thing. Give me a call. I can get you in a class like that or a permit class. Call me, text me. Area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. Don't forget to check out my website, patriotdefense13.com, patriotdefense13.com. You can also find my podcast there as well that you can listen to. And a podcast platform kind of allows me to rant and maybe get my feelings out there a little bit better than the radio would allow. I don't want to get Bill in trouble. So check that out. Share it with your friends.
What Mr. Nugent said a few times. But
yeah.
So you're not going to get me any more trouble than he is.
Forrest Anderson, Washington Street Pond, 321 Washington Street. Our phone number is 208-735-0012. Stop in the store. We're a family, locally owned business. It's my son and I there most of the time. We're local. We're going to be around when all the big box stores, everybody decides that they can't sell you something because it's not politically correct. We're still going to be there, but we're only going to be there with your support. So come see us. We'll be happy to talk to you. Be happy to show you how your gun works, how to clean it. Be happy to find something that fits your needs. Come in. We always ask, what is it for? What's your intention? How are you going to use it? We'll make sure you have what you need and how it's going to work.
I want to thank the two of you. We'll see you again, both of you, next week, same time.
I'll be here.
Same gun channel.
There you go.
To borrow a line paraphrase a line from one of my favorite TV shows. It's 9:58. God willing, to the Creektown Rise. I'll be back here on Monday morning between 6 and 10 a.m. In the meantime, Rush Limbaugh's program after the news at 10 o'clock on News Radio 1310 KLIX.